Hello, everyone. I'm Danielle Rogers, creator of Warrior Women Portraits. And today we have the privilege of speaking with an amazing woman I now call my friend, Kathleen Moss. Welcome.
Thanks, friend.
I know, right? It's one of these amazing things when you do get a diagnosis, you get to meet all these amazing people, and I'm so glad you're in my life.
Mm, likewise.
Well, I would love to kind of discuss a little bit about your cancer journey, how you found it, what your diagnosis was, and your treatment plan. And I know you had that in a little bit of section, so to speak. So I would love to hear kind of your interpretation of what your cancer journey has looked like, just to kind of share your experience.
Thanks. Yeah. It's been a couple of years. Well, it's been a long journey. It started about 11 years ago. They saw, well, I had a lump in my right breast, which was benign. And then in the process of checking that out, they saw a little bit of a shadow in my left breast. And so because of that, I had to have diagnostic screening continually for every 6 months. And because I had an excellent PCP who knew all about breast density, I was allowed to do ultrasounds and not mammograms, which would not have really helped much. So I did ultrasounds every 6 months. I got hassled a lot for not doing mammograms because the techs just didn't understand about dense breasts like they do today. And so it became a little bit of a trauma for me to go into these imaging centers. And I finally found one that was a little bit less abusive about it. And so kind of managed my way through that. But about 3 years ago, I started having bloody nipple discharge, which is a common symptom for breast cancer in general. And went in for imaging and they didn't see much. They required me to get a mammogram at that point. And of course, I had some calcifications, but they couldn't prove that I had DCIS without a biopsy. And I knew all about DCIS at that point. I'd done a lot of research about breast cancer, and I knew that DCIS was not the scariest thing in the world. And in the most recent years, a lot of people, a lot of surgeons and oncologists have even said that it would be overtreating to take any breast tissue to remove DCIS in a lot of cases. So a lot of there's some studies going on to monitor rather than taking breast tissue. And so they couldn't prove it with my first biopsy that I had it. There was no DCIS in the biopsy, even though they took quite a few samples. So I waited almost another year and kept doing MRIs and kept having bloody nipple discharge. And then decided to do a lot more kind of violent biopsy, a stereotactic biopsy, which was really awful. And
What's the difference between the two?
so the first one was a needle biopsy. It was a real
Right.
simple procedure. Wasn't great, but I loved my radiologist that did it. It was in a really nice women's imaging center, kind of a private, small practice radiology clinic. And um, the second one, I had, again, a little bit of a medical trauma story. The kind of nurse navigator person that was getting me ready for the procedure was really uncomfortable with my questions and really should not be in the role that she was serving in because that's her role was to answer questions
Right.
honestly. And I think she felt like if she answered me honestly that I wouldn't go through the procedure. And all I wanted to know was, is the radiologist going to be performing this biopsy with his hand, or is it going to be a machine that punctures my skin? I wanted to know what it looked like, how it would move, how sudden it would be. I had lots of questions. I needed to know ahead of time what was going to happen to my body. Fair questions. She was super uncomfortable, and could not answer. Honestly, she just refused to answer me. It was so
Wow.
awkward. Yeah, I don't know if she was new to the job or what the deal was, but I later gave a lot of feedback about her just feeling like such a poor match for that position.
Right.
Um, anyway, I got in there and it was really hard. It was a machine and it was something I was not allowed to look at as it was happening to me or even see prior to it happening to me. It felt really rushed and it was extremely painful and bloody, which I did not expect at all because my
Wow.
first biopsy had not been painful or bloody.
Right.
I was bleeding a lot, and there was actually a seroma. I found out way later that there was a seroma as a result of that. Well, I think two big biopsies that they did that day. So kind of a long
Yeah,
story of
yeah. No,
biopsies and
no,
over the
no.
years.
Yeah.
But that one did show DCIS. Finally, I was diagnosed with a type of precancer, a type of cancer that I could actually go and join a breast cancer support group finally. And I had a friend that was leading one in my county, in my rural county here in Oregon. So it was nice to just go straight into that at that point. And then it took almost another year to decide what to do. My bloody nipple discharge kind of came and went during that year. I knew that there wasn't a big rush. Um, but it turned out towards the end of that year when I was making the decision to get a mastectomy, there was quite a lot of growth of the DCIS. And my understanding now from talking to different doctors is that I have a lot of growth factors, which causes a lot of growth when you go in and make injuries and perturbations like biopsies. So I'm a huge advocate now of the liquid biopsy, which is just kind of coming out on the scene now as a viable option for people, probably not as the initial diagnostic tool the way a traditional biopsy is still used, but hopefully in the near future, it'll be something we can do that will avoid some of those growth factors taking off and
Right.
growing our precancers. So I finally did get a mastectomy a year and a half ago, and I still just had precancer. No big deal, no worries. My integrative oncologist, medical oncologist down in Ashland, she had told me that because the DCIS had grown so large at that point, that there was a chance that there would be some invasive ductal cancer inside of my breast. And because the density was so thick and dense that, they couldn't see anything. I'd had multiple MRIs, I'd had a PET scan, nothing showed up except for that little bit of DCIS. And so I was shocked to hear a week after my mastectomy that in the pathology report, I actually had invasive lobular cancer, which is
Right.
very hard to see. And I'd never heard of lobular cancer. In all of my studies and preparation for all this, never heard of lobular cancer.
And you're
So
like, no, I've educated myself with
yeah,
DCIS.
yeah. And
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
ductal, because that ductal is what everyone refers to as breast cancer.
Right.
You don't hear about inflammatory, you don't hear about lobular, even though lobular is 15%. There's more lobular survivors out there than there are ovarian cancer survivors. They have, big groups of cancer survivors. So lobular is a big group of women, but a small group that's researched because it's always kind of lumped in with ductal.
Right.
So now I'm a big advocate for lobular awareness.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of my story.
I love
I
it.
didn't have to do any active treatment in terms of like chemo radiation because my lobular was really tiny.
Okay.
So that part was not a part of my story. Very grateful that I didn't have to go through that further medical trauma
Right.
and pain.
Yeah. Did you go through any genetics testing or anything like that to see if you were dispositioned to any other markers?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had none on the very long, I think it's like 40 different SNPs that they test for breast cancer right now. They're probably adding one every few months.
Right.
But at the time, a year ago or so, I had nothing. But the characteristic of lobular cancer that makes it different, well, in a lot of ways, is the presence of a mutation called E-cadherin or a protein called E-cadherin that is the thing that makes our cancer cells stick to each other and form a lump.
Okay.
And so lobular doesn't form a lump, it forms more of like a spider web of
Right.
single file cell line that's very undetectable in imaging in most cases. I didn't have the E-cadherin SNP, the mutation for that in my heritage, not in the genes that I was born with, but probably I had cells that had mutated and developed that characteristic, is my
Sure.
understanding.
Sure. And when you went to the your single mastectomy, I know you did not get reconstruction. Was that something that you considered? Did you, what was your thought process there?
My first integrative oncologist had advised me to get a lumpectomy for the DCIS, and he said, just have them take the smallest amount they can and preserve your breast because that's important. And that sounded right to me. And he said, you can have a reduction in the second breast. And um, but then when I actually didn't see Dr. Limon, the gal that talked me into having a mastectomy, didn't see her until like less than a month before my mastectomy or my lumpectomy was scheduled. And she's the one that told me, there's a 50% chance of you having invasive cancer in there. I really want you to consider having a mastectomy. And I was like, well, yeah, you sold me. Yeah, that's all you have to say. I'm already sold on that. I'm not about taking any risks,
Sure.
and I'm not that attached to my breast tissue. So at that point, I was going to have a single mastectomy. And then my surgeon, when I went in told her that I was going to change my mind from like lumpectomy to single mastectomy, she told me about Goldilocks. And I was like, yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, probably have extra skin because I had large breasts, double D for my frame. Um, so I had plenty of extra skin. And she said, yeah, it'll make it look a little bit more like a natural breast. It'll be very small. But let's do skin conservation. Excuse me. And so she said I needed a plastic surgeon to do that. And so I met with a plastic surgeon. And I told the plastic surgeon, I hadn't heard about aesthetic flat closure at that point, but I did know just kind of intuitively that, of course, I didn't want an implant. And I knew at that point, well, thanks to my surgeon, actually, she showed me some nipple tattoos in my first consult with her, my breast surgeon did. And I was like, if I'm going to have a tattoo on my chest, I think I'd rather have a beautiful, like floral, botanical tattoo and not something that looks like a nipple because I'm just not that excited about a nipple.
Right.
So at that point, I started looking at mastectomy tattoos, and I think I saw a lot of flat-chested women at that point, and I thought, okay, I need it to be flat. So if it's not going to be a Goldilocks, if it's not, I told the plastic surgeon I need it to be either round and consistently, flat and round, no bumps, no false nipples. Um, and if you can't do the Goldilocks, and I don't know how I even knew that that was an option, but I did say if you can't do the Goldilocks for whatever reason, I want to be flat and smooth because I want a flat surface to do this tattoo on. And I think she probably cringed at that point, now knowing her as I do, because I had two surgeries with her asking to be flat, and neither one came out flat. She left excess skin both times. So she was from the school of thought that, the more skin you save, the better. And she wasn't going to take any risks and cut off any skin. I couldn't get a Goldilocks because there was calcifications in some of my skin. So what she left me with was a lump. The first time around, she left me with lots of extra skin. And I went back a month later because there were unclear margins for the calcifications, just in case. They took a little bit extra skin. I asked her then again to be flat, and she left a lump that she said she wanted to fashion into a false nipple. I guess she just didn't take notes or something and didn't remember that I didn't want anything like that. So that was pretty traumatic too, to come out of surgery both times and see myself not being how I had asked to be made.
Absolutely.
So I didn't go back to her clearly for my second mastectomy. After I learned I had lobular, I immediately knew I wanted a second mastectomy because if I didn't see that lobular in my first dense breast, then how was I going to see it in my other dense breast?
Right.
So my husband and I both were just like, yeah, absolutely, second mastectomy. Took me a while to get that one, but I got it in June of this last year, so just over 6 months ago.
Did you find that either, since you had like 3 surgeries, it sounds like, did your recovery change or shift between the 3? Or was it pretty consistent as far as like recovery time?
The second mastectomy was a little bit smoother. I had some more pain initially. I had no pain at all the first mastectomy, and my revision the first time was really mild. Um, I was very quickly recovered after the second one. I think probably because of my mental strength. I was really afraid before the first one. I thought I was walking into a different life where I would be living with chronic pain and hating my body. And just because I'd heard other women hated their body after mastectomy and other women had chronic pain after mastectomy. And so I was really surprised to wake up and be like, as soon as I could look at it, I was like, oh, this
This
is
is,
fine.
yeah,
No problem. Even though it had the extra skin that I didn't like, I knew that being flat was going to be absolutely okay with me. So that was a huge relief. And I was really alone in it because nobody else in my breast cancer support group had told me that they were flat or interested in flatness. So I was, at that point, I'd found a couple of podcasts and very nobody in person that could relate to being flat. So I was kind of on my own at that point.
interesting. That it's really interesting to me.
Yeah,
I mean, just now, I live in the community now, right?
right. I know. We're
And
surrounded now.
so that's really interesting to hear that you really didn't have anybody to really connect and get feedback from. So that's really interesting, which proves that all the advocacy that they are doing now is really starting to move the needle forward as the
So
option,
important.
and it's not for everybody, right? But it's an option, and I think as women we want to know what all of our options are and be heard when
Hmm.
we tell a doctor what our option is. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm really sorry you had some really frustrating experiences, because that it's a traumatic situation to begin with, let alone having a care team that you just don't have that faith in,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that's, well, how are you feeling now after,
Well, after my second mastectomy, I chose to have a Goldilocks the second time, which was a really hard decision. I didn't know whether I wanted to be consistently flat. I'm very concave on this side. So I've got a hollow spot right here. But I kind of wanted to have a little bit of a breast on the side that I had extra skin on. So I do have, if you can see, I have a little tiny bit of a breast here.
right?
And so I'm asymmetrical, which is the cost of having a little bit of a breast on one side. It's a little awkward to be asymmetrical, but I thought that would be worth it. And I've been pretty happy with no regrets.
Good.
And I've even found a place to get a custom prosthetic that is
Oh,
adhesive and
nice.
custom formed to my hollowness. Yeah,
Oh,
that will match
wow.
the awkward little tiny shape of my little crescent moon on the right. So it'll be perfectly matched for the times that I want to look symmetrical, which
Sure.
probably will be maybe once a week or once a month, not very often, but
Yeah,
for
yeah.
those times that I want to wear
and and it's just a choice, right? Like you just want that choice,
something really
like
form-fitting with strangers around.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Because we don't always want to be asked questions or like see people looking, going, so I
Yeah.
love that you found that option, because it sounds like it'll be completely custom to your body type, and
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Hmm.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit about your Warrior Women portrait experience.
Yeah.
You were my second person, right? Like
Hmm.
I was still finding out what this even really was. I had maybe like one little thing of makeup. Like it was so little compared to what I have now. Um, so I
Mm.
would love to hear your side of things, like what you kind of like, what you were feeling going into it, how you felt about the process and the images
Mm.
afterwards, and if there was
Yeah.
anything that surprised you along the way.
Mm. Yeah. So it's funny because I was just thinking about the fact that I had within like I think a month before I had did your shoot, I had two other shoots
Okay.
just so not like me. I had intentionally been pretty worried about the fact that I still had one natural breast at that time. And I was worried that I would forget what this stage, my one-breasted stage, felt and looked like. So I really wanted to document it. So I went out and found a local photographer who was comfortable with photographing me and in less of a, I think she did more of a boudoir style normally,
Hmm.
but I asked her to just do more of a raw
Sure.
style and less kind of sexy lingerie. So, and she did a great job. It was amazing. And then I'd gone to Flat Retreat in April of last year, and Cherise Isis was there, did photos of all of us out in nature, topless, which was amazing. And she made it so safe and sacred feeling. And I met you just in the month after
All
that. And
right.
I was like, I think it was like within 1 or 2 months that I had all three of these shoots. And so I felt like this is super self-indulgent. I wanted some pictures, but come on, this is crazy. But I did want it again. I was so loving the energy of, especially with Charisse, because we were doing it in community.
Right.
And I know that was kind of your inspiration
Absolutely.
for starting this project, was that you saw how we were doing photos in community with Charisse and the power of the
Yeah.
healing kind of spirit of it. And anyway, so I was like, yeah, sign me up and I'll do it. And I wanted to be your guinea pig so that you could get better at it and be more comfortable in your studio. And I also wanted to bring my friend Jen, who had not been involved locally in any breast cancer support communities and was pretty shy about that. And I thought this would be a really safe place to bring her as a breast cancer survivor also, that would just be, the two of us with Danielle, and
Yeah.
we could have a fun time together and kind of celebrate the sisterhood of ours. And she really opened up to it and did feel safe with you. And so it was a wonderful memory.
That's
It's kind of our
amazing.
first memory of being survivors together. Because I'm like out there in the community taking my shirt off and doing
Sure.
walks, whatever, but she's just way more private. And so it was just really cool to have it, just the three of us there in your studio.
It was quite the honor because you had said that she had not done anything really to um I don't want to say celebrate, but just like the shift that a cancer diagnosis, provides your mental state, if nothing else, aside from all
Hmm.
the physical changes and things like that. So ultimately, it's a feeling that I was wanting for the women to feel, right? I wanted we're kind of thrown into this fight. We're drafted to war, right? We don't choose it. And it's scary, it's messy, it's dirty, it's complicated, it's never straightforward. But we managed to get through it. And it's just been really amazing for me to see all you ladies come out of your shells and just really partake in what your vision is for, because I know your session, you wanted to be a little more simplistic. And that was wonderful. I love that you came with an idea and and I can't wait to do another one with you now that you have a slightly different body shape again. And
Yeah, I know.
so it'll be fun. I actually was interviewing someone else earlier, and they too were like, I can't wait to do another one and do a different look. And now that I've done it once, and really jump in there and just have a fun experience. So,
Mm.
and of course, as I go through, things shift and change, and I know
Mhm.
lots have changed since I did your session.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed
Um,
that. Yeah, lots
yeah,
more makeup options,
a lot, a little. I've had to adjust.
and the
So
lighting is really amazing, and you're adding in different special effects.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole new creative process for me, and I'm really enjoying watching the ladies really get into it and have fun and be silly. And as much as I love the like kind of the fierce, like growly
Mm-hmm.
looks, I love the next image, which is always them laughing and smiling because how ridiculous they feel for grunting and groaning. But
Hmm.
you get the two different aspects of it, right? Like you get the more fierce look, but then you just get the natural, like we're just having fun, we're playing dress up, and just
Yep.
just really celebrating being alive, right? And so I thank you for
Hmm.
allowing me
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
use
I'm
you.
I'm kind of a pacifist. So yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't know how I'd feel about the warrior image and the like weapon kind of
right,
aspect of it. I'm a pacifist, and so I didn't know that I would engage with that so much. But you had a lot of props that felt more tribal
right.
and almost like just back to the earth feeling, and so that made me feel a lot more comfortable and
Yeah,
just like there were some
absolutely. Um, it,
options for me as someone that may not be as comfortable holding an axe.
100%. And I think that was one thing that, as I moved forward with this, that I wanted to really embrace the fact that women can smile. They don't need to use weapons. Their look can be whatever they envision. Um, I've ended up adding a bunch of just rope and string, so
Mm,
that, and stuff like that, that's more just material wise versus a weapon.
mhm.
Um, and so it's been really fun to watch the project grow, and yeah, it's just been amazing. Has there
Yeah.
been any positives that have come out of your cancer diagnosis?
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's the thing. I think you're told to expect only negative. And you go in, of course, just assuming that it's going to be just this huge negative thing. And the generations before us were just so quiet about it. So you didn't really know how they felt. Or, I mean, if you can't be in community, then you probably do feel negative. But because I was able to find community first on just Instagram, just finding this huge community of Flatties on Instagram that were understanding what I had been through, but still kind of celebrating their bodies.
Mhm.
That was the first way that I found community. And then because of those contacts on Instagram, I learned about Flat Retreat. And showing up there was scary, of course, with all strangers and
Yeah.
not very much structure to the weekend, just kind of free flowing weekend. But then instantly, when I saw the leaders and how they had learned from each other to celebrate just deeply and authentically, and just be free and joyful with their bodies and open, with all of us. And they just kind of set the tone for body positivity, which I had never really even taken time to think about that concept. But
Yeah,
that's what it was. It was celebration of a new kind of body and the fact that we're still whole and we're still us and we're still beautiful. And that you could
absolutely.
just see it so powerfully in the way that they portrayed themselves and the way that they played and sang and danced together. And I mean, they obviously had a strong rapport, that group of leaders that was putting on the retreat. And the rest of us were just kind of sitting back for a bit and watching. And then we jumped in and started
Yeah,
celebrating our own bodies. And once you start that, you can't stop it. Like it doesn't go
absolutely.
away when the
Yeah,
retreat ends.
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was well, like I said, I was unable to attend that retreat, and really the warrior portrait experience started with seeing the comments and the imagery that was coming from the actual event that weekend. Um, and
Mhm.
you could see it. I mean, I wasn't even there, but I could feel it through the comments. And I was just like, dang, there's something here, right? Like there is just, and I never really liked my body, as I was older. But now I'm like, guess what? I love it. And I have a belly, I got a Buddha belly, and I'm alive. And that's really the bottom line, right? And um, I really
Mm.
love what
Yeah, and you've got a beautiful tattoo.
I know, right? I can't wait to see yours.
Mm.
Well, while we are wrapping up, I would love for you to, I don't know, talk about basically to a lady that might be interested in doing the Warrior Women Project, and how you feel like it might help them grow and just internally have some acceptance by going through the process.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I had one photo session that was just me and the photographer, and that was one thing, one person to affirm that you're still a human being after this procedure of mastectomy. But the second and third times were so much more transformative because the more people are who are there witnessing and loving you through it, the more self-love and self-affirmation you get out of the experience. So
Yeah,
it is scary if you're showing up with, potentially three or four other strangers, including the photographer. But you could do like what I did and grab a fellow survivor. Yeah, I know you now work with not just breast cancer survivors, but other cancer survivors.
Yeah.
So you could grab someone and have them sign up with you if you're an introvert like I am and haven't ever done anything like this before, which I
Yeah.
think probably is the case for most women. But I mean, I've volunteered with you and seen women come through, and it only takes minutes before they're just laughing and just having fun. It's a playful environment
Yeah. And that ultimately
and
that's what.
very safe. You make it so, so safe.
Oh, well,
And
that's awesome. Yeah, no, I love the fact that you know, if the ladies don't know each other, and you can tell, as they come in, as I would be going into a studio myself,
mm,
just unsure and really kind of reserved going in and being like, I don't know what I'm doing here, kind of thing. Um, but then as they get into it and they like within the hour that they're doing their makeup and their hair and stuff, it's just so fun to watch them collaborate with each other and like, what do you think about this? And should I do something here? Do you see something missing? And by the end of the makeup process, they've already gotten to know each other. So when the photo
mhm.
portion comes, it's a lot easier for them to just have fun and be silly. And because, well, from experience, I just I don't take myself too seriously, so I'm
Mm.
usually a goofball behind the camera regardless. but
And I feel
anyways,
like those who are standing back watching the photography part are always like the cheerleaders. Like
yeah,
the other gals who are not getting their photos taken are always like, oh, that's so great. That was wonderful.
yeah,
So yeah, it's like you've
absolutely.
got your own little cheering section.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story, and allowing me to photograph you in a really vulnerable state and be my guinea pig.
Oh,
And
it's a thrill.
I can't wait to do it again. And I just adore you, my friend.
Likewise.
All right. Well, you have a lovely evening, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Anytime.
Awesome. Well, if anybody wants to learn any more about the Warrior Room Portrait Project, it's a big word. We're pretty much everywhere, Warrior Women Portraits, and you can learn a lot of information. Reach out. I'd be happy to chat. And yeah, just keep living life and keep going. Talk to you later.